We did that once, right? I did that with, I don't know if you were on the board, I wasn't on the board, but it was, what's her name? Aroostook County, the town manager, 2 town managers ago. Yeah, and they went into executive session and had a big conversation, and the thing wasn't off, and then, Jason Button was watching it till the at the end, like before they all left, and then she came in here and she like turned it on. The whole thing was, then they deleted it, but those people had seen it, so not good. I mean, the state. Yeah, so we'll just have to ask that question in the meeting.
Alright, calling the meeting to order, would you please rise and join us in the pledge of allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Starting off with the approval of treasurer's warrants, payroll warrants for July 9th and July 16th, 2021. Do I hear a motion?
I move to approve payroll warrants of July 9 and July 16, 2021.
Second.
Any discussion, questions? Calling for a vote. All those in favor? Unanimous. The accounts payable warrants for July 13th and July 20th, 2021. Do I hear a motion?
I move to approve the account payable warrants of July 13 and July 20, 2021.
Second.
Any questions, discussion? Calling for a vote. All those in favor? Unanimous. The approval of the minutes for July 6th, 2021. Do I hear a motion? Any discussion?
I move to approve the minutes of July. Oh wait, no, you need the motion after because if there's errors and omissions, you have to say it as amended.
All right.
Sorry.
Pam's name is spelled on the very last line. That was the only thing I saw.
My name?
Pam.
Oh,
Pam.
I didn't notice that. I know.
Very classic.
It's midsummer, isn't it?
Anything else for corrections? Okay, thank you, Jackie.
I move to approve the minutes of July 6, 2021 as amended.
Second.
Any other discussion, questions? Calling for a vote. All those in favor? Unanimous. We do not have any special presentations or awards. Moving on to committee appointments, the Waterfront Committee. We hear a motion from Ronald Lehman.
I'll make a motion to appoint Ronald Lehman to the Waterfront Committee.
Second.
Any questions, discussion?
I would just like to point out that Mr. Lehman is a vendor on the pier. We already have a member who is a vendor.
That's a good question. Is it written down somewhere that you can only have one vendor?
No. Yeah, it's not written to have only one vendor, but I think it's something you want to keep in mind where they're making decisions for the property that they're sitting on to run their businesses. So how many of those businesses are you going to allow to be represented on the committee? I think that's one of the things you have to look addressed.
How many members on the committee?
5.
How many members are supposed to be on the committee?
I think it's 5.
Five.
Oh, we already have 5?
Yes.
Well, we have 4 because Don Davis was on, so.
So you have 2 with the side would be vendors.
Has anybody else stepped forward? Have we advertised that we needed someone?
We're always advertising.
Then.
Yes.
What's that?
Motion to
No.
Okay. If you wouldn't mind just standing up and saying your name.
Kim Dolce. Actually, it hasn't been advertised because I reached out to Linda Perry the other day just out of curiosity across the board what seats were empty on various committees, and it hasn't been advertised.
That was on the website, but we're meeting on this for everything, so.
Okay.
I would move the question.
Okay. Question has been moved. All right. Calling for a vote. All those in favor? Opposed?
Reluctantly in favor. I'd like to see us put a bigger push on making public the open seats. You know, not just on the website. I think it needs to be as an article of its own in the newspaper, on the Facebook page for the town, and anywhere else we could outreach.
Good idea. Good idea.
Yeah, we need, I mean, advertising isn't just having it on the website, because how many people use the
Right.
website? It needs to, if you want people on these committees, they really need to push.
I agree. Okay. All right, moving on to the cemetery committee, we have 2, Mark Light and Terrell Wells. Is it Terrell? Is that it?
Please, Terry, use
Well,
Terry.
no.
I don't know why my parents named me that, but yes.
Okay.
Terry. We don't want to.
What's the matter? Thank you. Okay. Do we hear a motion? So moved.
Second.
Any questions or discussion? Taking both at once. Calling for a vote. All those in favor? Unanimous. Okay, moving on to the budget committee. This is something I never thought I'd see, this many people on here, which is great. We have Kim Dolce, Thomas Joyce, Anna Riddle, and Kathy Mark Savage. Do I hear a motion? So moved.
Second.
Any questions, discussion? Okay. Calling for a vote. All those in favor? And then, final one for committees. The future of the Wiscasset Schools Ad Hoc Committee, we have 2. For the 2 school committee members slots, Michelle Blagden and Jason Putnam. Do I hear a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
Any questions, discussion? Calling for a vote. All those in favor? Thank you. And thank you to everyone. These are all really important positions, so I appreciate your service.
And just remind everyone, you have to come in and get sworn in, because you have to get sworn in. Maybe somebody turn that AC off so that the rest of you can hear.
Or just
It's on your microphone.
Yeah.
But even last week, I had complaints about the AC, so.
All right. No public hearings, correct? Public comments. If anyone wishes to address the select board, just a reminder that it is a 5-minute limit, and I do ask that you keep your comments to things not already on the agenda. There will be a chance to comment if you have something related to something on the agenda. So if there's anyone who has anything to share, we move the podium up here so we're not blocking everybody.
And there is a microphone on the corner of the desk.
Come on up.
I'm a little disturbed about the vote.
Can you say your name, please?
James Cochin. I addressed a memorandum to the chair of the board and the town manager about a code of ethics for this town. I don't see that listed as an ordinance revision topic or on the agenda. Is that correct?
That's correct.
It's not going to be discussed today?
Not tonight, no.
Okay. Then I'm addressing the recent appointment of another vendor to the pier. Whether it's a conflict of interest or perceived conflict of interest, I'll leave that for everyone else to decide, but we, as one of the committee members pointed out, we already have a vendor sitting on the waterfront committee. And in my memorandum, I questioned whether or not that vendor should have the ability to be a voting member to begin with. It should be an ex officio slot where they represent the interests of the vendor. Now we've got two vendors on a committee that currently is 5, is that correct? I don't recall seeing a vacancy announcement for that committee hanging on the wall. I come into town frequently to check on these things. I didn't see it on the website either. Whether that was the case or not, wasn't well advertised, and it concerns me deeply that you've got two members of the waterfront committee who are vendors, and of the remaining members, 2 of them are represent adjoining businesses. So there's a perceived conflict of interest situation in almost every single person sitting on that committee currently. I think we have to have a broader representation than this. We need to keep this in mind in all committee appointments, and until we establish a code of ethics that's incorporated into the town ordinances, this could always crop up. The only thing that safeguards the town as far as conflict of interest currently is financial by state law. But again, there are ethical standards beyond just financial self-dealing that are not being addressed. And it's been left by the state for towns to deal with themselves. I attached to my memorandum an example of a fairly simple and concise one that was adopted by another town in Maine. I seriously think we need to be looking into this sooner rather than later. Thank you.
Thank you, and I just want to thank you for your email. We did receive it and did look at the memorandum. We do plan to address that probably at our next workshop to make sure that we have something in place, because as you stated, the only guidance really is just the financial piece, which is pretty cut and dry. But and the other piece I would say is, correct me if I'm wrong, but the waterfront committee is technically an advisory committee, correct? So while they do vote on things, the select board does the ultimate approval. So I hear what you're saying.
I would like to add one thing to that, though. The select board has never not adopted what they have advised as far as fee structures or anything else, so.
I can't speak for past or future boards, so.
Well, on that same point, it would be nice, since that is a funded committee, one of the few in town that has its own budget.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I'm gonna have to, yeah.
No, this shouldn't be how this discussion goes forward.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public? Okay, thank you. Department head and committee chair updates. We have our monthly reports in your packet. Again, wonderful job. Thank you to all the department heads for being extremely thorough. Are there any questions from board members, comments on any of the reports? Yeah,
Yeah, I just wanted to say good job, and I was really impressed with, I mean, granted, we had a pandemic year, but everybody came in quite under budget, and also I was impressed with the Parks and Recs department working together with Public Works. It seems to be a very good relationship, and so kudos guys, thank you, I don't know where you are, but thanks.
Any other board comments or questions? Ed?
I guess I just want to
Would you mind?
compliment.
Thank you.
Ed Polomarczyk, I guess I just want to compliment the police. I'm actually amazed every month at the number of calls and the events that they respond to, and actually it's a little bit concerning because I always seem to be surprised that so many adverse things are going on in our little town. But I want to compliment the police in the way they handle it all. I think they're doing a great job.
Agreed, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you again to department heads. Cemetery committee update. So board members, you'll find the 2 extra pieces of paper. Peter's gonna help me out with this, but the cemetery committee did meet last night and does have recommendations for the fence and the archway to present to you. So you'll see the minutes from last night as well as some of the preliminary budget numbers. So Peter,
Sure. I'm not going to present each option like I've done in the past, but I do have a copy of a vote last night.
I printed it out. They have it.
Peter, would you turn the microphone on?
It is on.
Is this on?
Yes.
Oh, there we
Thank
go.
you. Okay. Anyway, after much discussion, both from our committee and the public, at a vote of 3-1, we recommended concept D, which includes concept D for both the fence, which is going to be, we're recommending an aluminum fence with open spindles for the perimeter of the cemetery. And we're also recommending concept D with regard to the entranceway, which is basically simple in design, 2 granite pillars with a metal archway, granite steps leading down to a small platform area, and 2 simple granite benches, along with some ground cover to blend it into the existing landscape. So it was a good meeting, a lot of back and forth. But we are recommending that to the select board to consider for improvements to the ancient cemetery. I have the designs here, but you've seen them all. They've been submitted and passed out in packets. So I'm willing to answer any questions about the designs or costs associated with them. I think I gave Sarah a preliminary budget numbers on a range of how much things would cost, and this is a range. Now, we don't expect, if we do get approval from you, to go out to bid until the fall. We can't start construction until next spring because material now takes 6 to 8 weeks in order to order. Contractors are extremely busy, so we're looking at a spring startup for both the fence and the entranceway.
And just to remind everyone, the cemetery committee did take 2 votes because the fence can be paid for out of what's already been approved by voters in terms of the perpetual care fund. And then we would need to put an item on the warrant for the special town meeting or another town meeting to spend funds from the lot sales account to pay for the archway because that's not maintenance. So that's why it's separated. Any questions? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
And thank you to the committee.
Looks really nice.
I'm gonna stay up here because I'm up here next anyway.
So I would entertain a motion to move forward with, no, what?
Well, I mean, we just got this stuff last night. It could not have been in our packets or posted online for long enough time for anyone to look at it. Could we vote on this in 2 weeks? Usually we don't put things on the agenda if we don't get them before Thursday, before the meeting, in order to give the public time to read the materials. I didn't even read the materials because they were emailed to me this
I was
afternoon.
really trying to get this on the special town meeting warrant, that's why.
Then I guess we could do it this time, but it's not appropriate.
I wouldn't be in favor of doing it this time. I wouldn't. keep it in the timeframe that we have, like you're saying.
Okay, I just feel like it's been out there,
It
a
has
lot.
been, but it's, we have an
Just a
obligation
second.
to make the information available to people, and I agree with you, like, I'm all ready to vote yes for it, but it's not really my place to do that because we haven't given people the time, as frustrating as that is.
Karen?
I really sympathize with what you're saying, but I really wish that we could make an exception for it this time because the information is exactly the same. Most was presented, I don't know, how long ago did we start this?
Before March.
It has been out there, and it would be reasonable to expect the public to have seen this in that amount of time. And it is important to put it on the warrant. So I'd ask you to please consider this as an exception to our normal way of operating. I get it, I understand.
Then you have to have a motion and a vote to suspend the
Okay.
rules.
Well, our next meeting is August 3rd. So we can put the vote on August 3rd and that's still in time before August 17th.
Okay.
Okay, so
Okay.
we'll do
I
that.
appreciate that.
That solves both.
I think it's important that we get it out to the public with not just the designs that we talked of, but with actual numbers, because actual numbers were never in front of us before. And I think it's important for people to know, what it is they're looking at here. And again, I think it would really be nice if the town had, someone working on the publicity for some of this, because I think what goes out in the newspapers, is good in general information, but for something that's, this big of an expenditure, I think we need a little more push on getting that information out. Like Kim, I'm in favor of, this design. Back when it was first presented to us, this was the design that we leaned toward to begin with, and I'm ready to vote yes, but I think to give the public the time.
I also think there's something to be said for the process. And if,
Follow the process.
like, we have a process and, we shouldn't veer away from our process because it
You
suits
don't
our
want to set
convenience.
precedent if you're making exceptions for things.
Right, and we've been doing that, I feel, a lot lately.
Sir?
Yeah.
I'd like to say, yes, we have presented this to the select board. It has never gone to the sanitary committee with you guys because we weren't formed yet. But each time that it was presented, numbers were there and they haven't changed from this. They were presented orally, not as a sheet, but these numbers were always presented this way. So that has been out there, at least in a public meeting, but not in writing.
Yeah. But I think we might as well put it on the next one. I appreciate all our efforts to get it done for tonight, but I agree, and I think this will satisfy both in terms of getting it on the town warrant so we can get that bid out there in time and fashion, so thank you. One more public comment, if you don't mind coming up to the mic.
Could we turn on this microphone, please? It's on my deaf ear.
I'm afraid that we're going to get feedback. That's the problem.
You'll have to bear with me, I had a bout with tongue cancer and I have a bit of trouble speaking, pronouncing something. Anyway, I'm also a long-time member of the cemetery committee as well as other committees, yeah. Excuse me. And I attended the cemetery committee meeting last night. And I really think that the vote should be set aside because I don't think that Mr. Christensen, where he works for the town as a paid employee on the cemetery, should have a vote. And I think Peter should have had the good sense to step aside after trying to promote his fence and gate. And that being the case, there wouldn't have been a quorum at the meeting. And also, nobody mentioned the fact that at the meeting, there was a message from the American Legion that they definitely were not on board with this particular design. And I also talked to a former resident who still owns the property just down the street here today, and he has family in the cemetery. He thought I was kidding him when I told him what they had in store, what they had in mind for the fence. But anyway, I think that there should be a public hearing, and there are a lot more people. I haven't heard one resident in town who has roots here, and by roots I mean people buried in some of these cemeteries, who's in favor of this particular design. I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Could you ask him to say his name?
Could you say your name, sir?
David Sutter.
Thank you. Any other questions from the board or the public? Okay, so we'll go ahead and put that on the next meeting agenda. All right. Next up, unfinished business. Schooner Fest. Request for funds and request for use of the town property.
Yes, we submitted a request for funds from the celebration fund last month or a month and a half ago. Since then, we have submitted a new request for less amount of money. Our fundraising and sponsorship level is moving forward. We're doing quite well. We've raised up to this point $17,000 to $18,000. We understand that there's only $8,000 left in the celebration fund that is to be used for both fireworks, holiday, and hopefully a schooner fest. So we have reduced that to $5,000 in hopes of getting that on the warrant for the town to vote on. As I mentioned, we are moving forward quickly. We only had 2 months to consider sponsorship because of COVID. We couldn't ask for sponsorship until May 1st. So we have been moving as fast as we can with the small committee that we do have. And it's working out quite well, but we are hoping not only the town, we appreciate that the town's going to support Schooner Fest with police, fire, and ambulance services that will be needed for any festival for downtown. And bear in mind, this is a public-private partnership with the town, with the Parks and Rec, since they're going to be running their triathlon, which is a major program element of our Schooner Fest. So we've been working closely with them. We have a ton of volunteers lined up. We're hoping for a successful Schooner Fest, and we'll see. It's our first year. It's grown to the point where we're excited about it. We're a little bit overwhelmed because it has grown, but we're going to move ahead and see what happens. So I hope that you would consider supporting it through the fund that you do have. So.
Kim?
I would like to, before I make a motion about the funding, I would like to say that I do not believe that there is any conflict of interest with either Sarah or Terry voting on this. I read the state ordinance, the law about conflict of interest, and neither one of you stand to gain financially from this decision. In fact, the only people who stand to gain from this decision would be the town that was cast as a whole. And so, our town does not have an ethics ordinance, nor do I think that we need one. In a town of this size, we all wear many hats. And unless somebody's going to benefit financially, like the state of Maine says, I don't see it as a problem. It's the same reason that I'm a select man and not a select woman, because select man is the only legally recognized name in the state of Maine. And so I'm not going to try and fight that, and I also am not going to fight the code of the conflict of interest ordinance. So having said that, I'd like to make a motion that we place $5,000 on the special town meeting in August for the Schooner Fest.
Thank you for that support, Kelly. I do not believe that there is any conflict of interest on my part because of exactly what you said. And I read the Bridgeton Code of Ethics, and I thank gentleman for sending that along. It's an excellent document, and there are several phrases in there that might be useful, so we'll look at that. And keeping in mind that I have read that, there is nothing in the Bridgeton Code of Ethics that would suggest otherwise. I want to be as honest and open and fair about this as possible, including to myself. I'm a citizen, I'm a member of this board, I was elected to vote on these kinds of issues. I would appreciate being able to vote this time, having recused myself before when it really was not necessary.
It wasn't, and I think that that was an error, and I'm willing to let that last vote go, but my motion is on the floor.
Yeah, and we need a second before we can continue discussion, so.
Second?
And Steve, I'll get to you in a second. Any other board discussion before I go to the public? Steve? Oh.
I previous discussions, I feel stand on this, the points that Kim raised last week, that the Schooner Fest committee said that this wouldn't cost the town anything, and now it's costing the
Can you
town.
speak up a little bit more into the mic?
I was saying that I think the points that were made last week by Ken and others, the planning on this event and requests for town money should have been made previously, and I understand that things were messed up because of COVID, but I think it's important that we follow the correct procedures in terms of spending money here. I think that's something that we need to do, you know, as a responsibility that we've been put here to do.
Yeah, thank you.
So, I'm going to vote against this again, just because, I know I support Schooner Fest personally. I think that you have done a terrific job. I think it's gonna be a major event, hugely successful, and I want it to be successful, okay? But here's my however. Several years ago, Wiscasset Speedway, a private business, had a huge festival at their place. When they used town services, they had to pay the town for those services. And the town did not fund a penny of that event. So if this were taking place out at Wiscasset Speedway, we wouldn't even be having this discussion, but because it's downtown, it's being considered as a different entity. This is private businesses working together to help private businesses to become more successful. And I don't believe that you spend town resources on private businesses. So I want Schooner Fest to be successful. I'm very impressed with all the work that's going into this, but I cannot support spending taxpayer dollars on it. I'm really sorry to have to say that, but you don't know how hard I've thought over this and fought with myself over it, but I just can't get over that hump. I'm sorry.
Can I respond to that?
Yeah.
Yes, I hear what you're saying, Pam. This is a private-public partnership. It's a nonprofit, whereas the Speedway is a for-profit. We're not going to get any money from this. We're spending all the money we can get in order to, and it's basically for Wiscasset in general. Not only the town to put Wiscasset back on the map, but for local businesses. So there must be some leeway with regard to a nonprofit requesting money for something like this. So I just want you to be aware of that.
But,
Yes.
so the town has there been any discussion of them paying for the ambulance, fire, police presence, 5 days of that, which is probably going to be in the $10,000 to $15,000 range that the town's already going to be expending on this.
Correct. And yes.
So it's not just $5,000, becomes $20,000.
Well, that's a number that you pulled out of the air. You never did a process.
It's a guesstimate, yeah, it's a guesstimate. I'm fully aware of it.
I can go on record as saying this is our first year, and yes, other festivals end up paying the town for services. Pumpkin Fest, Windjammers, this is our first year, and if this is successful, our sponsorship's gonna go up. We're gonna be able to raise a lot more money, and we don't anticipate asking for this any future year. And you can quote me on that. We don't anticipate this to be a yearly thing. This is our first year, and we're taking somewhat of a chance, but, so, that's it.
And I haven't forgotten you, Steve.
Okay, so just as a point of order, the motion on the floor is to put $5,000 on the special town meeting, and that's what the discussion is supposed to be about now. Second hand, they're a nonprofit, they're nothing like the Speedway, and I don't want to engage in crosstalk. Third, just as a comment, we've never been off the map. I don't want to keep hearing that. I don't want to see it on Facebook. I think that it sends a bad message to people who've lived here for a long time.
Okay, Steve?
Can we go
to the podium?
Yeah, please.
I'm Steve Christensen, and I just want to thank you for what you just said. We've never been off the map, you know, and Peter just said, and you can quote me on this is what he said, but I can also quote him what he said in February of 2020.
I remember.
And again, we discussed this 2 weeks ago, and I don't want to spend a lot of time, you know, rehashing this, but when somebody says that there will be no cost to the town, back then, it was part of that selling point of the thing. And don't get me wrong, people, I'm for the project. I just don't like to see somebody say there's going to be no cost, and then later on, you know, you're asking for this money. There was nothing ever talked at budgets. We discussed that at the last meeting. So to make this short and sweet, you know, I think that I'm going to use the words that the no cost to the town. You know, a person's word, or in this case, a committee's word is their word. Their word was no cost to the town. I'm asking them to stay true to your word, and I'm also asking the board to stay true to your word of your last vote 2 weeks ago of the no, because as soon as the motion didn't pass, it was immediately brought up that we want to bring it to the next selectmen's meeting. And I'm thinking, you know, I didn't think that was right at the time. So my point is this: no cost to the town. Their words, not mine. It's in the minutes. I've read it 1,000 times. So I just want to say again, you know, stay true to your word. You know, and I'll leave it at that. And I thank you.
Let's take one question on that. Yeah.
May I say something?
I agree with, I agree, Steve, but I also feel like this thing has gained a lot of momentum, and I'm willing to put it in front of the taxpayers. We're not going to decide to spend that money, but I am willing to go out and say to taxpayers, you may come and vote on this, because they very well may vote it down, and that's, but I feel like it's up to the people who vote.
Jorge Peña, resident of Wisconsin. Obviously, I wasn't born here, you can notice by my accent. I don't have a Maine accent. I didn't learn how to do that. But one thing that I heard through all this year were the schooners. This town went through a fractured time when people were divided for the main street. People were talking, there was a big brouhaha. Okay, that's over. Still the town remains, or continues with that brouhaha. In one way that to me is a symbol that you can see in these walls of Wisconsin are those schooners. I even didn't know what the names of the Little Hester, or Big Hester, or Little Luther were, but I've been learning through that. And I commend all the people that put their time into that. And the only thing I want to do is to invite all of you to come to the streets of Wisconsin, where we have these silhouettes in which we just don't honor only one group or something, but lobster men and lobster women, and we are going to do collage in these silhouettes of what used to be of old pictures of Wisconsin and so on. So I'm not asking here for money, just inviting you to join us and celebrate Wisconsin. Yes, we are in the map, we have been in the map, we'll be in the map. That's it.
I like the accent.
Says you.
Dustin.
I want to say also that I'm definitely in favor of this festival. I think we all are. I would like everybody to be excited about it. And I think a lot of people, if they feel like they've been forced to accept it and pay for it against everything that everybody's been saying here, that it will leave a bad taste in people's mouths and a bad memory for them. And I think for that reason alone, it's important that we use the process. A statement was made at the last meeting that it was going to happen one way or another, and that the money that was requested could be offered afterwards. I think that's an opportunity for Schooner Fest to show that it's something of value that will bring money to the town for we start, writing checks.
Yes, sir.
I'm a little concerned about the constant mention of the public-private partnership, because you're trying to do a vote to authorize town monies to support an event that is organized by a private, not-for-profit organization. And I think it's great. I love what they're doing. I think it's a great idea, and I'm all behind that. But I am concerned about the use of public monies that have not been voted on. And on the same agenda is the discussion of a use agreement. We don't even have a use agreement in place with the Creative Alliance and the town yet we're talking about voting to give monies before we have a use agreement in place. Is that correct?
I just want to clarify, we are not voting to give them money. The motion is to put it on the warrant. I just want to make that clear.
Exactly. Well, that's what I'm getting at. We're already putting this on the warrant, but we don't even have in place a signed agreement between the organization and the town. Is that correct?
That's next on the agenda.
Yes. But that's what I'm saying. It seems like the cart's before the egg.
Well, we can't wait to do the user agreement after the vote, especially if Schooner Fest has already happened.
One other question I have, it relates to what Pamela was stating, and that is, do you have, there's 5, as far as I figured, there are 5 departments that are affected by this event. Public Works, Parks and Rec, the police, fire department, EMT, and also administration. Do you have a rough budget of what you're providing in in-kind services and salaries already for this event, barring the money that is to be put on the warrant?
We've been working on a rough budget, but the problem is we really have no idea what we're going to be doing. Schooner Fest has said they're going to be taking care of their own trash. They'll have their own people picking up the trash and taking that stuff to the. I'm not anticipating having to put on extra EMTs. Do I think the call volume might go up a little bit? Probably. I don't think we're anticipating putting on a police officer for the entire event. And as far as Dwayne and what they've done up there, he's been organizing the triathlon pretty much only. That's what they do. They do marathons, they do races, they do other things. So there's really no added expense coming out of that for what they're doing up there.
I just think it would be nice to have.
But I do think your point is correct. I think there will be, and that's what I've said all along. There's going to be in-kind contributions to this of some sort.
Right, and this is not what other communities have been doing. As Pamela also mentioned, it was stated that it would not cost the town. It should have, unfortunately, it didn't make a warrant, whether it's intangible costs or actual add-on costs. It does affect the town and our budget, and I'm all for the festival, but also I'd like to keep our taxes either in stasis or going down. Thank you.
Thank you. Pam?
To the first point he made on the order in which we're voting these two items, there's really no conflict in how these items are being voted. Whether the town agrees to vote to help fund Schooner Fest or not, Schooner Fest is going to happen, they need permission to use this property. So whichever order you vote the use of that property in, it doesn't matter, they're still going to need to use it.
Okay,
I'm a little confused about something you said about this being the vote to put it on the warrant.
yes.
The letter from Peter Wells said this is a request for $5,000.
That's not the
I
motion.
know, but
made.
that's not the motion.
I made a motion to put
Yeah.
5,000 on the
Yeah.
town meeting and to let the taxpayers decide.
So I'd like to move this forward, so if there are any other, Linda, did you have something new?
Now, petition drive for white picket fence.
I have a question within a comment, and my question is, I understand there's a little over $8,000 in the celebrations fund. What happens to the unspent money of this fund after the Christmas decorations? What happens to the remainder of those funds?
Any funds that are left over at the end of the year automatically lapse into undesignated fund balance. So technically, as of this moment, there's no celebration funds left. Everything is in undesignated fund balance. What normally would happen is the voters give the selectmen every year the authority to carry over unexpected funds in each account as they deem appropriate. That hasn't happened yet in this case. And if this is actually going to end up on the warrant, then it would just, I believe the question would just be worded to take the money from undesignated fund balance and not from the celebrations account.
I just didn't know if undesignated funds were eventually put into lower taxes.
They can be used for that if it's necessary, yes.
Depends on who's sitting on your board.
Okay. All right, any other discussion, questions from the board? All right, calling for a vote. All those in favor of the motion to
What you restate the question, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Just to make sure we're understanding.
rereading. Thank you.
So, one discussion. The commander's resolution for $5,000
So the motion is to put $5,000 on the town, special town meeting warrant
For Schooner Fest.
for Schooner Fest. All right, all those in favor? Opposed? Abstained? And just want to explain, until we have some sort of more guidance on conflict of interest, particularly since the use agreement has Wiscasset Creative Alliance all over it, I don't feel comfortable going back on my previous vote, so.
You don't have to explain.
I prefer when people do, so.
Thank you, Sarah.
All right, thank you all for your discussion. All right, so moving on to that use of town property agreement. I did have one question that I think Kim did as well. On number 3, the term, I wasn't sure why there was any mention of a 12-month period when this is just specifically for.
Well, if they're gonna do it year in and year out, I mean, it's gonna be a yearly thing, then.
But we don't do that for others yearly events though, is my.
That's fine, it can come up. It's just kind of a boilerplate statement. Anyway,
Yeah,
so.
the reason why I thought why I questioned it is that, my understanding is we're gonna have these big 4-masted schooners parked down at the recreation pier. And currently, commercial fishermen overflow and use that pier, so if these schooners can stay for a year because we have that agreement and for some reason they decide they want to, it will become a problem. So I would like the term, it could become a problem. If you talk to certain lobstermen, it's a problem. So I would like the term to just be for the event. Or maybe like a couple of days on each end to cushion it, if necessary.
Other, give them a week before and a week after maybe, to arrive and settle in, and a week to be able to.
I can assure you, these schooners, one of them is costing us $8,500, and they have a schedule that is beyond belief. So they're gonna be here for just those, actually just 4 days, and they'll be off to another harbor in order to, that's their business. So they're not gonna hang out here, just for the fun of it.
Okay, so a week on either end would be fine.
Sure.
Okay,
That's fine.
that makes sense. Yes, okay. Any other questions before we vote on
Just one comment is the recreational pier is already being used, has been rented, from by Wicked Good Yoga for certain periods of time during the days, so.
Is that first thing, that's first thing in the morning, correct?
No, it's different times in the mornings, it's, 6 in the morning, 9:30 in the morning, 5:30 in the afternoon, so it's 3 different times, 3 days a week, 4 days a week, and once on Saturday, once on Sunday, twice on Friday, so.
I think the morning times would be no conflict at all, because we don't really get started until 10:30. The afternoon, yes, would be the conflict.
Yeah, well, they've rented the space already, so.
So
They're
we-
going to be there
We'll have to
5.
work, we'll have to work it out,
Yeah.
so they have the availability.
So it'd be like
Saturday.
yoga
We can work
and
it out.
tourists at the same time.
Yeah, so from 5:30, from 5, no, not 5:30, 5 till 6, there's a yoga class taking place on the pier, 4 days a week.
We can reach out and talk to them about rescheduling or working out
Yeah.
another place.
I know this because I'm the manager of Wicked Good Yoga. Just, so we can talk about it, but, you know, people sign up for these classes because there's specific periods of day, and it's the time of day they can make it in, so we'll have to have a talk, and I'll talk to the owner of the studio as well,
Okay.
but the studio has rented that space, so it essentially belongs to the studio for those time
Sure.
periods, those days.
Well, it's not closed to the public though during that time.
No, it's not, but it's, you know, I'm just saying, that pier needs to be open for that class to take place.
Well, let's just make sure that's worked out.
Yeah, we need to, you know, we need to work together and make sure it happens for everything. Sure.
Okay, any other questions?
No. Sounds good.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion.
I move to authorize the town manager to execute the use agreement with the Wiscasset Creative Alliance.
Second.
Any discussion, questions?
Talking to death already. I'm sorry.
Calling for a vote. All those in favor? And abstaining for the same reason.
So Peter, we'll need that insurance certificate before I sign off on this.
Yes, I can get that to you later on this week.
Okay. It'll take me a day or two to make the changes that they asked.
Sure. And we are applying for a temporary business license as requested, and we do have a liability insurance.
Thank you again.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to new business. We have a bid opening for a Bobcat 5600.
I'll take my call. One bid was received from Jordan Equipment. The bid price is $89,549.40, which is within budget.
Open to a motion.
I move that we authorize the town manager and the director of public works to
Award the
accept
bid
the
to the
lowest qualified bidder. Thank you.
There's just the one.
Yeah, there's just one, I know.
Okay, so moved
Oh, second.
Any discussion, questions? Calling for a vote, all those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you. Animal Control Services Contract for Lincoln County.
And I'd like to make a motion to authorize the town manager to execute the animal control services contract with Lincoln County for fiscal year 22.
Second.
I just have a question as to why, if this contract began 20 days ago, why we just have it now?
Because I didn't get it until
They didn't.
recently.
Okay.
There's a 30-day extension on it, so
Okay.
it's still doing that.
Any other, any other questions, discussion?
Very alert, Madam Chairman.
I try. All right, calling for a vote, all those in favor? Thank you. Correspondence from Reads Across America. We got a very nice note from Richard Barter, who's a volunteer with the Brunswick, I guess, group of volunteers, thanking specifically Sergeant Hatch, and Chief Bickford and Chief Hasselstein. So, thank you for their help during Reads of America. Okay. Monthly financials. You also have those in your packets. Anything you want to add, Dennis, or any questions from the board?
I think Kim was right, though. I think everybody did a great job this year. With COVID, we certainly had no idea where things were going to go, and so we tried to keep things pretty close. I think I'm not quite prepared to go into that just yet, but it looks pretty good. So.
Yeah, and just one other comment, I forgot to mention it before, but Dwayne said in his report that he thinks he's gonna close out the year in the black, which is the first time
Well,
that.
that's not gonna happen.
Oh, okay, never mind.
To his credit, he
Close though, right?
he
I mean,
kept-
they did
he
it,
kept
it's
his
really
budget.
good job.
He kept his budget down. His revenue, shockingly, was one of the better years that he's had. I think he was almost 95% of his projected revenue for last year.
Yeah.
And given the circumstances,
Under the
we were in, I think
circumstances,
that was super good. So.
He's closed for the, for several.
So the amount of taxation was less than what we anticipated. So. Yes.
Anyway, pretty good.
Yep. Very happy.
Yeah, after all the fear, what COVID would do.
We just didn't know. It's just hard not. I tell them not knowing.
All right, moving on to a request for a liquor license relocation from Chandler Snip, Soden, doing business as In a Silent Way, LLC.
So just as you guys will recall, she was in the Walnut building when it collapsed, and was forced to close her business down. She did find a place on Water Street that they're pretty certain they're gonna be able to go into, and we're just trying to get them in there as quickly as we can so they can take advantage of some of the summer business while it's going on.
I move to approve. Second.
Any questions? Okay, calling for a vote, all those in favor? No. I'm glad she found new space. All right, discussion on school resource officer and police cruiser.
So both of these items failed at the annual town meeting, and so at least with the school resource officer, and we're not really sure why. I can assume it was because of money. I have had some comments from people who just don't feel that we need a school resource officer. I've had some comments from people who think we do need a school resource officer. I'd say they're around about 50-50. The budget we put into that was about $58,000, which was on the top end of the budget. Sergeant Hatch is currently the resource officer. He does not take our town health insurance, which means if I used him as a resource officer, I could cut down on that amount a little bit. The danger of that is if he has to be reassigned less than halfway through the year, and whoever we put in there ends up taking our health insurance, we're going to give them budget. So that's why I went that way with it. The school, however, does have $10,000 that they can kick into this, which will be reduced the amount we asked by 10,000. So that would take it down to about 48,000.
Can you clarify what is the plan to find funding elsewhere and still have a school resource officer, even though the people voted not to have one?
No, but if you remember, one of the articles that we had was to vote any budget for 3 months.
Yes.
That failed, so that we could come here and have the discussion about
That failed?
what we were gonna do. No, it passed.
Oh,
It passed.
And I get it, that failed. There was a pause there that I read as a comment, sorry.
And so that's why that was there, so that we can have this
Right.
discussion as to whether or not you want to represent a lower budget to the voters for the school resource officer,
Okay.
which we can do with.
At our
help
special
from-
town meeting?
Yes, and we can do that with help from the school.
So what would be the final number?
You should have asked. It would be $48,000 and change.
And we would just be putting it, we would vote tonight to put that on that special
All you
warrant.
voted is to put it on, correct.
We better be direct. Just saying.
Yes,
It's gonna be a bigger,
it would
I
be,
think it's gonna be a
yes.
bigger meeting, yeah.
Thoughts from the board?
I think it has a strong possibility of passing if it's seen that the school department is helping to fund the position. I'm a little unclear as to why. I hear often if it's a school resource officer, the school should be paying for it, but he's a police officer, the police should be paying for it. I think those kind of arguments are pretty useless because you're gonna take it out of your left pocket or your right pocket, it doesn't really matter which
Right.
pocket you're taking it out of. But I do think that seeing the school is stepping in and partially funding it, this would have a better chance of passing. Having said that, I don't know how much we need a school resource officer in Wiscasset. I'd be interested in hearing from the chief of police as to what the school resource officer does. Not saying that I'm against it if my son was still in school, but it's like 47, so that's not gonna happen. But if my son were in school and we needed a school resource officer, I'd want to know that he was there, but I'd also just like to hear what are the things the school resource officer does and why we need one. If the chief would not
Chief, do you
mind
mind?
filling us in just a little bit. So I know we have full information, and then when I vote, I know what I'm voting for.
I guess, the role for this, the SRO for Wiscasset the past 3 years, kind of hasn't been used to its full potential. When I came here, we didn't have an SRO, or we had the position, but it wasn't filled. I filled it with a green guy, somebody who had no police experience at all. I don't believe that helped the program at all that much, although he did build a rapport with students, and we got some good cases after that, cases that I can't talk about, but we got some good cases with his rapport with the students. He got involved with some of the after-school sports, and then when he stepped down or left that program, Sergeant Hatch stepped up. Sergeant Hatch has had both the basic SRO school and the advanced SRO school. And he was kind of handicapped with COVID. The school got rid of his office that he had up there, so he really didn't have a place to talk to kids, so he was kind of basically floating around. But I do think there's a value of an SRO. I know, Kim, I've heard you talk in support of the SRO in the past. You know, and because of staffing issues, some of those things, you know, my involvement with SRO is basically from Waldeboro, where law enforcement was at all the sporting events. If there was something going on in the school, law enforcement had a presence there. Unfortunately, with Wiscasset, because of our past staffing issues, we haven't been able to do that, but I would like to do that.
Do you see that, Tom? And do you see that happening if the SROs return to the school, that their presence at the school would broaden and become more involved?
Yes, and I've actually had a conversation with Sergeant Hatch about altering his schedule. So if there's a ball game at night, he would just come in later and work later. Sergeant Hatch has 2 young boys that are involved in sports. He's actually one of their baseball coaches, little league coaches, whatever, t-ball, whatever they're in. But I know he's really involved with the students. I know one of the examples. I see Sergeant Hatch at the racetrack, and the kids are coming up to him. They know him from the school. I mean, I remember Kim making reference to a dance where he showed up, and all the kids were going crazy because he was there. Or maybe a couple of the girls, I don't know. But I do think that SRO can have a positive impact. We just really haven't had the opportunity to use it to its full potential.
Thank you.
I know that from an administration standpoint, when you have an SRO, it's very helpful, especially when you have to do wellness checks and truancy visits, which we do frequently. There's some comfort in arriving with, in a police car as opposed to arriving in my Ford Escape, because you pull into some places. Now, I'm not talking about Wisconsin, I'm talking about Searsport, but the needs are the same everywhere. This is a high poverty area, and a lot of our kids are suffering. And so it's nice for them to have the opportunity to have a positive relationship with law enforcement, where that may not be something that's a norm in their home life. Yeah.
Any other questions for the chief?
I have a question. Just to what extent is an SRO sort of an idea from larger towns where police department is further away from the school and response time is a variable?
I guess I don't understand your question.
Well, let's cast it, the police department's right here, the school's right there.
Yeah.
Whereas a bigger town, where if I remember right, SRO was something that came about when school shootings started getting real bad. And so the idea was to have a police at the school so that if something happened, there wouldn't be drive time to get over there to deal with it. Right? But that isn't really a factor here, or unless you disagree, that's what I'm asking.
No, I wouldn't disagree with it. The problem is here, I'm the working chief, so if I'm on a call, it's like when Dennis reached out to me that night and said that the SRO got shot down, I said, so great, now not only am I the working chief, I'm also gonna be the SRO. And he goes, no, it was shot down. I go, exactly, so I'll be getting those calls. So.
Yeah, but there's not a lot of crime at the school. Like, the SRO is not there to fight crime or protect the school. The SRO is there to build relationships, positive relationships with kids and connect kids in a positive way to law enforcement. So, it really affects the way that our youth see police, and it just makes it positive.
And we really got involved with the elementary school. Sergeant Hatch has spent a lot of time down the elementary school as well. And since I became the chief, we started the DARE program down there. So we're involved in both schools. But I do understand your question, and my response time to the school, if we didn't have an SRO, would vary depending on the calls.
What's the pleasure of the board?
I would move that we, vote to put the school resource officer on the special election warrant.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion or questions? All right, calling for a vote. All those in favor? Unanimous. Okay, and then the police cruiser.
So most of the comments that I've gotten on the failure of the police cruiser, I think, rise from understanding that, we bought a cruiser last year, why do we need to buy another cruiser this year? Which was pretty much the only thing that I've heard from people. We have 2 worn-out cruisers. One's a 2015, one's a 2016. What I'm really trying to do is get us on a replacement schedule so that we're not having to buy a cruiser every year. So that we're buying a cruiser, we should be able to get a minimum of 5 years out of one of these cars. Anyways, we've gotten 6 years out of one of them, right?
And I wouldn't disagree with that as long as we had the multiple vehicles. I mean, right now, our 2016 has 190,000 miles on it. It's been down for 3 weeks, 2 weeks.
2
2 weeks. And hopefully we'll get it back later this week, but, it had some major issues. It's probably gonna be, what, $3,000 right there?
In that area.
And that's the one with 190,000. So now the guys have all been driving the 2015 that's got roughly 120,000 miles on it, which may or may not be experiencing transmission issues depending on what day you're driving. So,
I think the police department's budget clears out a pretty healthy margin every year, which strongly indicates that the town wants a police department here. I think we can't have, I know we cannot have an efficient police department unless they are well equipped. It's irresponsible for us to ask these people to go out and work a very difficult and challenging job, and they not have the resources they need to be able to complete their work. And they shouldn't have to worry about if the car's gonna lose second gear and while they're driving down the road, and 120, 130,000 miles on a car in today's cars is not a lot of road mileage. However, these cars probably have 300,000 or 400,000 miles in engine time.
18,000 hours on one way.
There. So you can't really go just by the mileage, the number of miles it's taken down the road. They've never shut off. Anyway, I think that they need another cruiser to replace at least one of these older ones they have, and then I think we can go to buying one every 2 to 3 years, is what I believe. And I would move to place the police cruiser on the special town warrant vote.
Could I just ask that the word, have some sort of word as, I don't know if you mentioned, replacing 108 or one of the cruisers? Because that's what I heard back from me. Somebody said that they voted down the cruiser, but if they knew it was replacing a cruiser, they would have voted for it.
Yeah. This will be an open town meeting, so we'll be able to have that discussion.
We'll have the discussion.
Okay, it's been moved.
I just have a question.
Okay,
Are we gonna
it's
put
been
the,
seconded.
yeah, are we gonna put the same amount forward, or how's
Yeah,
that
has
work?
anything changed?
Okay, so you're just gonna try again?
Yes, just try it.
Okay.
Any further discussion?
Just one other question, is it possible to trade in the old one for a new one?
They don't want it. It's not that they don't want it. In the old days, that's what we used to do. They'd give us $1,500, $2,000 for it. But now, if we buy a new cruiser now, it's 3 months just to get this stuff to outfit it. So we wouldn't be able to trade it in and wait 3 months for the stuff to the new
No,
one.
We're already in that situation now.
Yeah, understood.
Still.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Did you do something?
Yeah.
Terry.
All right, calling for a vote. All those in favor? Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Chief. All right, recommended ordinance revisions.
So also as part of this special town meeting, there's going to be the solar ordinance that the ORC did earlier this year that you guys know about. When they passed the shoreland zoning ordinance last year, we removed timber harvesting from our ordinance as being something that we enforce. The state's going to enforce that on our behalf. So there have to be some changes in some of the other ordinances to remove references to timber harvesting so that the ordinances are all consistent. And so that's what these are. I believe, Jack, you guys have already taken these out, right? If you are sitting there and you voted on them. So that's all these are, and I'm just letting everybody know that that has to be the case.
Any questions from the board? Ed?
I went looking the other day for the latest version of the solar ordinance on the website, and all I could find was one dated March the 15th. I know there was a revision sometime in April. So if somehow or other you could either put that on the website or make it available so that people can actually look at what they're going to vote for.
Yep. And that's the same with the solar in the bottom of this. The solar ordinances are just bringing everything together.
So we do need to vote on this, right? Or no?
No. Because I'm going to vote on it when I put it on the warrant. You guys will authorize it. And there was also you had discussion at your workshop on revisions. I don't remember if we actually got to anything that you wanted to put on that warrant. I know.
Oh, not on the warrant.
I mentioned the budget committee and you see what happened. Everybody ran the budget committee, so.
Okay, employee vacation time carryover discussion. Dennis talked about this in his report. But do you wanna-
Are there any questions? This really only affects a handful of people, especially up at the transfer station where we have one employee in particular because he has to drive the trash truck and we can't get CDL drivers to save our life. And he just wasn't able to use some of his holiday pay and he's gonna lose it. And I don't think he should have to lose it because he put in extra hours for working for the town. Our policy says I can award 10 comp time because he's not subject to FSLA, but hourly employees, it just doesn't say that. So I'm just asking for the board for a little discretion to issue some comp time to people that don't lose it.
To do what?
Issue some comp time to people who are losing their paid time off.
Kim, do you?
Does this impact support staff contract negotiations or anything icky like that? Then I support it. As long as it doesn't have like a ripple effect and it's gonna bite us
No,
in
I don't think so.
negotiation time.
Any other questions?
No, it's just, have you gotten a legal opinion on that?
Yes, I talked to Matt Terrasat.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so, okay, so you,
Yep.
you know, okay.
Yeah.
No, I support them. Do you need a?
No.
Okay. All right, request to use town property with Cassett Creative Alliance.
That's been postponed, so we'll just stick over that.
Okay, new business license application, Robert Stevens doing business as Sheepscot Fine Arts and Antiques, 11 Summer Street. Any questions on this one? Okay,
I would move to approve the business license for Robert Stevens.
Second.
any questions, discussion? All right, calling for a vote, all those in favor? Okay. All right, Energy Committee. So this was coming out of, the recommendations that the Climate Club from the middle high school, had for us now several months ago, I think. And I know, Dennis, you have some ideas about things that they could work on, as a committee. So, I don't know what else you want to say about that.
You know, the streetlight project has been on my list of things to do since I came here. The streetlights converted over to LEDs, which I think will save the town a lot of money. I just don't have time to work on it. So, as a committee to help with that. There's grant money available for electric car chargers that we could be looking at, so it would be placed about town. Some of our facilities could stand some energy upgrades, and I can give you some help with all of that stuff. So, there's things to be done.
And this would be a select board appointed committee, just like the cemetery committee.
Although I do believe one of the school members wanted to be, one of the students wanted to be on that.
Yeah, I think we said,
I don't know how we want
I
that.
think
they could definitely be an ex officio, but, yeah,
Yeah, they're not old.
they're not 18, so, or some of them maybe, but
Then, I mean,
no.
not the
Well,
ones that are in my
yeah.
peer right now, no.
Okay, any questions? Was there, did you?
When you're finished, I would like to go back to the previous one. I didn't get a chance to raise my hand on that one.
The business license?
Yes, and I'm fine with the fact that you approved it, but I do have a comment.
Okay.
I'm happy to wait.
Okay. Just a second. All right. Did you have a?
No.
Do we need a formal motion to? Okay, we do.
Well, I make a motion that we form an energy committee.
Second.
Any other discussion, questions? All right, calling for a vote. All those in favor? Great. This is against the rules technically, but if you can.
Well, I think you might be interested. I'm thrilled that you approved this business license, but I'm kind of surprised that it doesn't seem that anyone is aware of this business license being approved, even though we had several warrants on, several ordinance changes on the last warrant that would have disallowed this.
Well, this has to go before the planning board anyways.
You know which ordinances I'm referring to though, right?
But the business itself needs to go before the planning board before he can open his doors.
Okay, I just, there's.
If you will notice on the second page.
I did, I
there's
read,
a straw man that says
I did read that, yes, but there is an ordinance that says, and again, I'm happy, I voted against that ordinance. I would like to be able to see people like this have businesses in their home. But the ordinance seemed pretty clear to me that it said that if you were to have a home-based business, that you, and it was a retail business, that you could not sell anything that you did not produce yourself.
True, and that's a decision for the planning board.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Take this. And I assume you're talking about MUBEC, correct?
Pardon me?
Talking about MUBEC, Maine Universal Building?
No, she's talking about our
The separate
our town ordinances on home businesses.
Oh, okay, never mind. Okay, town manager's report.
Any questions, comments, anything? I know the state DOT thing is an issue. I'm on the phone with them multiple times a week, trying to do something. There's not a whole lot we can do about it except scream and holler, and trust me, I am.
Good job. Thank you.
Okay, we have 2 executive sessions. I'll entertain a motion.
I move that the board move into executive session pursuant to 1 MRSA subsection 4056D.
Second.
All those in favor? Thank you.
Well, then, talking about this. There will be a vote after this meeting.
There will be a vote.
There will be a vote.
With the change in 12 months.
Maybe you should leave my packet out there. Then agree with
He's in a resident area. So the planning board could hear and possibly determine that it's business takes to put it to residential area. I voted that says that no that's not a you don't have to change the ordinance. The planning board can't. Right, it's changed to say that no so this person No, I understand what you're reason, but I'm getting mine. Yes, sir. This would be we just take the reps off and put it on, we can't. For example, I sold mine, thanks.
Good luck.
No operation on this, it's not a year, it's not a Tuesday.
Federal sold it.
It is a long day.
See ya, thank you.
When somebody buys it, they can't open an antique business.
Two executive meetings and there's gonna be a vote.
That's what they said, look, Franco.
change within a year.
Yeah, but didn't your ordinance just preempt that? The new ordinance says you can't open a business that isn't self-produced materials. So it doesn't work. The grandfather clause doesn't work like it used to. I mean, I opened an, the person who bought the place for me, fortunately, is an artist, so she opens it as a gallery, she'll be selling her own works for Hill. But if I sold it to an antique dealer, he couldn't sell antiques there because he doesn't produce them. Our new ordinance bars people, they're living upstairs. But the new ordinance, yeah, so, I mean, I'm hoping we can get rid of that ordinance. I hope somebody.
You understand the reason?
I understand some of the reasons behind it, but I think it was not well thought out applications, so at least Village 1 and Village 2.
There's a lot of discussion about it.
Well, unfortunately, none of us in town knew anything about it because the minutes weren't out there for us to see or get the agendas to know that this, no, we never saw that stuff. I yeah, but I don't see it as, I never saw until Bruce produced those things and they went on the warrants. Those particular little line by lines, they didn't show up in the minutes for the agenda. There's discussion of ordinance changes on the agenda, but they're so brief that they don't tell you anything about it, I would have showed up at that meeting to argue against it. I would have mobilized a bunch of dealers in town to come out with it because the value of the properties are now destroyed if they ever sold them.
Right, well, maybe it's something that our commission could, but should you only exempt antique?
No.
What would you think?
I think the idea of not allowing retail in somebody's house where they've traditionally been done is not a good movement. At least in Village 1, Village 2.
Well,
It's been done for 200 years in this
if
country.
you have a house, you lived in that, in a nice residential neighborhood, 20 years, and all of a sudden somebody buys a house, he wants to put in a hardware store, or a bookstore, or a jewelry store.
Well, that's a residential neighborhood.
Yeah.
But see, our ordinances specifically say very passive things like bookstores and antique stores, they've always been exempted. They've always been allowed in a live-work situation. It's in our ordinances. But this new ordinance that we passed now is prescribed, it's killed it all.
I'll bring it up.
Yeah, I mean, I plan to, is that the place to bring it up, OSC or planning? Okay, when's your next meeting?
I don't know, not every month, next week, because we have no.
Okay.
So,
Please let me know, yeah, when, I'd like to come there and present it. I mean, I have no vested interest anymore. I closed my shop down in town, but I really feel for all the small businesses in town who lose the value of their property.
but you can also see how other people lose the value of their property.
Well,
If somebody moves in next door.
Well, they all have to go through planning for it, right? See, the way we've always protected it was planning board had to review a business going into a live-work situation, and they're only allowed in Village 1, Village 2, if I recall. The type of, Village 1, Village 2 zoning allows for passive type retail stores, antique, specifically names antique stores, bookstores, things like that, art galleries and things. And it still has to go through planning board unless it's been within 2 years, as you mentioned. But the new ordinance now kills that. So, like again, if anybody closed their shop that had traditionally been an antique store, and it's residential street, that part of Federal's not commercial, that's residential, but it's always been an antique store for like 50 years there. The new owner cannot have an antique store there under the current ordinance. No, you guys didn't preclude a grandfather clause. You put a new ordinance that says no building that's a residence can have a business that is not where the things are produced by the people. And actually, that doesn't safeguard porn too. What if the guy produces porn? He can sell the stuff he produces. Yeah. But me as an antique dealer, I can't sell 200-year works of art because I didn't produce it unless I forged it. So this is, you know, yeah. So, you know, this is, Bruce introduced this one, didn't he?
No, I didn't.
You did?
Yeah.
To get rid of the businesses?
To restrict it to things that people have made, because there were, I'm trying to think of all the examples.
Well, I'd love to sit down with you sometime before the next meeting and discuss this a little bit further, because I think it can cause more harm than help in the long term, at least in Village 1 and Village 2. It could really hurt the town's economy. Great, thank you so much.
Good seeing you.
Good seeing you.
Hey, I want to wait a little bit, but I don't know how long we're gonna be in it, but two stories, right? I was wondering if you could give me an email. What's this one? At least I could hear tonight. No. Oh, my daughter, my hair, she said, looks so bad today. She had to do it. Thank goodness. No, I don't. No, I don't. I had 4 stories to write today. I still got 2 more. And the commission's been, and I don't want to wait too long for them. So if I don't, can you email me what they're going on and everything? If you don't mind. I'll wait a little bit. I'll wait another 15 minutes. This off all night, and of all days, I'm gonna say, I'm having carpal tunnel surgery on my hand next Tuesday. So they decided to call me today to get all the information they needed. That took me almost a half hour on the phone. And then do you remember Mark Westrom? He used to be he used to be sheriff in Saginaw County, and he was the jail administrator. He got himself in trouble. Oh yeah, they let him go. Kept on driving under the air. So he got fired, which he deserved. And I've known this ever since he was born, you know. And because I felt bad for his downfall, so I hadn't heard from him for about 5 years. He called me today. He told me that I didn't have, you know, I didn't want to discourage him from talking because he's just getting himself straightened out. So it's just been one of them days. What's that? I wonder what the big deal is to him.
Oh, I don't know. I can't. I'm going to eye doctor and keep giving glasses and everything. I can't pay for those glasses. Because they know that their glasses it's not a recipe for macular degeneration, which I have. I told him I thought I had that.
That's something.
So I have an appointment tomorrow with specialist in
Did you say how bad how hard it is?
No, I don't decide on tomorrow.
Because I have it, but it's like, it's, you know, it's, I haven't been checked this year.
But I have it. I know it's one of those glasses.
They take A-Reds, it's a medication, vitamin for your eyes.
I don't know.
But Bob takes a A-Reds, it's a vitamin, I guess it has a lot of the green vegetable vitamins.
Yeah, he's a doctor of tomatoes or something.
Yeah.
Gosh.
But do you see without your glasses, okay?
I can't read.
You know?
No, I mean, look, if I first of all, if I know that's there, I know that's not the schedule.
Charlotte, my corner is taller than usual.
Really?
Don't come out and see it.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah, well, I don't seem to broke them down. Bob's tried to plan it a couple of times, and it's two separate things. Never had any luck with it.
You ought to come out and see it.
I will. Did you agree that?
I'll bring in some more coffee.
Okay, that sounds good to me. I'll do that.
Oh, well, yeah.
How would I know you'd
But I
still
mean,
be
you
here?
got,
Well, I said I'd wait a little bit.
Tell that guy.
After all, I stick around. That's my job.
It's not the water done, it's the pipes you gotta worry about.
Yeah, that might be the case.
Ready? I vote the board, I move that the board come out of executive session.
Second?
And we don't vote? You vote to come out of executive session?
So
Because you
you're
can't
gonna have to
vote.
explain that to me, because that's voting in executive session.
Ms. Parliamentarian,
What's that?
Do you-
You're in public now. You vote to go into executive session and you vote to come out.
Thank you.
Right. You can't vote on any, you cannot vote
You have to
on.
vote in public.
All right, all those in favor? Okay.
so,
Do you need a motion?
yes, the motion is to approve the police contract for whatever the dates was, January 1st, 2021 to June 30th, 2020.
It's June to June. Are you
July 1.
He said January.
Oh, sorry.
You
So,
said
Is it
January.
July?
It's the fiscal year, July 1,
To June 30.
June 30th,
2024.
2024.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor? All right. Now, I'll entertain a motion to go to our next executive session.
So moved. Can I just do that? So moved.
Yes.
Second.
All those in favor?
There will be no announcement after this one.
What's that?
There will be nothing after this one.
Okay, what just happened, because I didn't hear the motion. The motion was to, approve the.
Approve the police department contract for July
Union
1.
contract. Hey, that's good.
Okay?
So July
2021 to June 30th, 2020.
I suppose, yes, I'll tell you.
That's great news.
Great.
Thank you, Jackie.
Good night, Jackie.
What is there? I'll get it.
Thank you, Jackie.
Okay, thank you.
Horrible. Yeah, that's, this weather's terrible.
What, out of the tap?
Yeah. What are you drinking? Tap water.
Okay.
It's nasty.
Good night and thank you.
Oh, is that what they already voted?
Yeah.
And not even the second one? And I missed it? Was there any discussion? Or just everybody vote yes?
But the next one is not gonna be a vote.
Oh, okay. Latest solar ordinance, what did he say? I didn't hear him. Is he gonna put it out somewhere or?
Yeah, I think it's, I'll send it to you.
Okay. Because I know I have the voting date in April, sometime in April. And I know you've had a couple of meetings since that I didn't get to. So I don't know if you did any further revisions or not.
I don't know, I got so many different versions, I kept getting changed little.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And, so anyway, I will send you.
Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome.
interesting meetings, aren't they?
Yeah, they go fast.
I got something interesting about it. I liked what Sarah did it right. She was saying, well, if you're involved with a group, it isn't, to me, it isn't a matter of just the money. It's a matter of sure doing something that affects the group you're associated with, and they benefit. No, that's,
Yeah.
no.
I don't know, I'm saying, what a lot of meetings would show up, this huge thing, and I realized that they came, last year,
Yeah.
or whatever, but they said they had no cost. But I've heard, maybe they were, this is probably just about the wayside, and if I remember that, and when so we were going to this huge meeting, I took the traffic is so bad now.
Well, and
The way they put those flowers up, you see the flowers?
Yes. Now, I really like it when I move my something, and just a short distance, not 30 feet, but Gary was saying something about adding another 70 feet or so. I don't know what that
I don't know about that, but I read the police, I mean, the DOT description, saying if you are going, if you're exiting from, say, Sprague's,
Okay.
and you want to go south, you turn north, and you go and find someplace that you're going to turn around. Man, I mean, that's dumb. Find someplace to turn around.
That's like me and GPS when I'm starting to say, go, do a U-turn, go, do a U-turn. I'm not gonna do a U-turn, I'm gonna go down.
And it's bad the other way. If you want to go, if you're coming south, and you want to go to Sprague's,
Yeah.
you have to go down Railroad Avenue, and then up Lincoln Street to either Federal or Middle, and then turn left and go down.
You answer the bypass.
No, this is, we can't go on bypass. I know, it's ridiculous. I know, and we waited, trying to get out of the guy went down, now you go down Middle Street, so they're right, you can get out.
Yeah.
So we're just off, I'm on Middle Street, just off of, Route 1. So, we get on Middle Street, and then we wait for the light. Oh, did you read their answer to that, the
No.
long wait? Well, they're gonna put a little counter in there, so it tells you how many more minutes.
I saw
Three,
something
two,
flashing, 3,
one.
2, 1 down there, yeah.
So that's their answer. to
Is that for the driver?
And the pedestrians.
Oh, it's for both, oh.
So that you won't,
Get
give
impatient.
up and But I know there are quite a few people waiting to go on this side on Middle Street, this side on Middle Street. And finally, when you get the left, the yellow light, you know, you got all these.
Oh, yeah,
trying to
yeah.
turn left. And a few long corners.
Never a dull moment.
Oh.
just hope you're caught in the flow of signing it up. Oh, well, not everybody's duplicitous, I have to remember that. It seems like there's an awful lot around. I wonder why, I wish they would take reality TV away, because people seem like they're supposed to be living in these dramas.
I love reality TV.
No, I still can't.
I feel better about myself when I watch The Bachelor.
I couldn't care less who's on the island, it's why I got rid of cable. Interesting, and bachelorettes, if she kisses all 12 men 5 minutes apart, you don't think that's disgusting?
What? I've never watched any of it.
Bachelorette, where she's kissing one man right after the other, she's got like 3 of them sitting there in the hot tub, and she kisses all 3 of them.
Remember the dating game?
You don't think that's freaking gross?
Yeah, it's gross.
No,
I
it's
mean,
gross.
I wouldn't do it,
No, I
but
think
it's
it's
fun
gross.
to watch.
Yeah.
No, Sarah, no.
Especially knowing that they
It's
all
my
know.
one.
It's like, when they, no, seriously, when they was like talking
You have to
that,
watch Jamestown.
that Survivor show when they were voting each other off the island, and if you don't catch the fish, you don't get to eat the fish. You do know they
I
had.
never liked
No,
Survivor.
but you do know that they had a buffet on the beach at the end of
Oh,
shooting.
I'm
over
sure,
there.
I'm sure.
Yeah, it's just TV. There's nothing real about it.
Yeah, there's an excuse to.
I'm watching this one called Jamestown right now on PBS. Yeah, it's set in Jamestown like in 1619, but it's like Melrose Place in 1619. It's so
Sarah, you
ridiculous.
guys do have to vote.
Yeah, I know.
So I move that we come out of executive session.
Second,
All those in favor?
this was a long meeting.
How about a motion to adjourn?
It is, it's 7.
Motion to adjourn.
It's
So,
7:59.
All those in favor?
And guys, I'm sorry, I looked at my watch in there. I have to turn off the notification thing. Like I get a text and then
No,
look,
don't-
and then
no.
people are always like, oh, I know where to hurry. I'm like, forget it.
So executive session ended at 7:59. Jackie's gonna ask you.
Is this still on?
Yes.
So now everybody heard about my reality TV.
Oh, nobody.
Dennis will cut your reality.
No, it's
No, it's live.
It's out there.
It's live.
Oh, nobody's sitting there watching this afternoon.
Yeah, Jim Bochner.
They need to, like, they can watch reality TV. If they're watching this, they need to have reality TV.
Sorry. Sorry.
Go home and find dinner.
Well, so the text from my daughter was that.
Well, we
she
just
made a
signed that
motion
one.
to be held as a-
I don't know why it's a straight vote, so I don't know why.